This is going to show you a solo GM getting platinum rank on a solo hunter whilst using the exotic helmet, Celestial Nighthawk. So I first experimented with this run to see if you could one-shot the boss, because we have access to easy debuffs this season, so plus radiant. So I wanted to see if you can. You can't. We used to be able to hit 999 on this boss whenever you were in a strike or any nightfall really. If you ever saw a Goldie Hunter, it would probably be me, because you could just one-shot the boss, and that's what I used to do. We can't do that now, which is a shame. I know it would sort of make it a little bit too easy, but it was still fun nonetheless. That isn't the case anymore, but because of how the boss is, because it's coded as a wizard, their crit multiplier is different to other types of enemies. So the amount of damage that you're going to do to the boss will be insane, but the boss is hard capped for damage, which I'll talk about when we get to the boss fight. When we get to there. But up until the boss, it's very useful, this, because Scarlet Keep, as I've said time and time again, it's a long range GM. In actual fact, I think a lot of people do like Scarlet Keep as a GM. I actually like it as well, because it's really versatile in what you can run. It's a good GM. I can make good content around it. I like it, which is why you've saw me do a couple of solo GMs on it. Not to say that that is the reason because it's easy. I mean, it is easy, but it also opens up loadouts and conversations for other things other than just a certain set amount of weapons that we're all using right now in the game. So it opens up conversations for other things. And also, Celestial Nighthawk's going to get a buff next season, because they've released the tooltip information to say what it's going to be doing, which to me it's kind of a con, and I'll tell you why it's a con. So the new tooltip information basically states when you get precision kills you get super energy or whatever, right? This used to be a intrinsic thing to Celestial Nighthawk at one time. They then changed it so that when you get a kill with Celestial Nighthawk, you get a third super back, right, or whatever. That feature's alright, good and all, but the precision kill thing, right, or what we used to have on the precision hits, that was insane. So they took it away from us and they're giving us it back. But regardless, it's still going to be a good feature with Celestial Nighthawk when they give us that back. And it works with Radiant, the super itself, which at one point I don't think it did. But obviously, it has for quite some time. So you can stack. I use an Acrobat's Dodge because knives in this game on a solo hunter are... I mean, they're not very reliable, are they, in endgame? Because your fan knives don't one-shot enemies in GMs. It'll one-shot maybe a Thrall, but most enemies not. A weighted knife will if you get a precision shot. The proximity knife's fantastic, but doesn't one-shot. So you're not getting your knife back. So I want Radiant via Acrobat's Dodge, because I don't need to reload my guns because I've got Solar Holster on, which I highly recommend you start running holster mods in GMs, especially when you're using machine guns and stuff. Holster mods are invaluable, as long as they do work with that weapon, because some holster mods don't work with certain weapons sometimes. But I can confirm with the loadout that I'm using, it does with Xenophage. It would obviously with the Solar Fusion, but I'm using Envious Assassin, so that doesn't matter regardless. So you can see the damage that we're doing. Once we get our debuff and get one shield break, once we pop our golden gun, it almost one-shots the champ after shield break. You'll see as the GM goes along, I modify the strategy because I'm not getting the kill with Nighthawk, therefore I'm not proccing the third super energy back. What I'll do, I do end up modifying it later on in the run. I end up doing a shield break with the bow, a hip fire shot with Xenophage, and then golden gun, and then I get the kill, because the champ is always left with what, 2-3% HP left. So it means my overall uptime on energy, super energy, is slightly less. However, I did fire off 12 golden gun shots in this run, so it was still decent. The fact that I could fire that many shots off. The only reason why I think this build's good right now is because you can debuff from a range, and being able to fire a debuffed golden gun shot on a champ in a long range GM is valuable, I think, and I think it's decent in this. Do I think it's good in Battlegrounds? Probably not, because this build has zero survivability really. I mean, I could have put on a healing nade and what have you, but then that means you're relying on your solar, your fusion and your heavy to sort of keep the Ember of Empyrean going and stuff, which would have meant that I spammed more ammo than I should. So that would work if I used Taikus, but I wasn't interested in running Taikus in this, although Taikus is fantastic in this as well. It's not a very good barrier weapon, if I'm being honest, but in terms of like ad clear, it's the best solar bow in the game. Better than the other one, better than the Spider, the Watcher bow, whatever it's called. The ring bow, whatever it's called. It's not. It's better than that. But I wanted to use another utility weapon like I did the other day, because Jotun was the weapon I used for a utility weapon on Solar Wizards. So I was like, right, I don't want to use an exotic primary. So how am I going to deal with the wizards? Apart from the fusion, the fusion does a good job because it's unstoppable fusion and you still knock wizards. But how are we going to deal with them from a range? So I was like, well, I don't need a machine gun on for this build because all my damage is coming from Cecil Nighthawk. I need something that's long range and does really good damage, and Xenophage fits the bill for that. For this, being able to two-shot a solo major wizard and then 5 or 6 shots on an ultra, that's really good ammo economy. But the LMG Xenophage obviously only holds 28. Well, it is quite a lot, but over the grand scheme of a GM, you've still got to sort of strategize when you're using it and what bricks you're getting. Make sure that you've got Solar Scavenger on if you're going to replicate this run, or at least use Xenophage in it. I can see people using Xenophage in it, but I can't see people copying my run with the Cecil Nighthawk because the skill uptime on it is too high for people to care about. Not to do. I didn't say to do. To care about. Like, people, when they're running, like, over the weekend, they're off work, they're running GMs. They've got their raids done for the week, they're running GMs. Yeah, they're aware of that there's higher skilled loadouts, but they don't care right now. Some people don't care about that. They're looking to just play for their experiences and what's fun to them. So just because I've posted a run like this doesn't mean that people are going to copy it, because I just feel as though it's going to be too much of a bother for people to set this run up, hit all your golden gun shots in the exact right way, and stuff like that. So the takeaway from the video is there are miles better setups than this, but it's very interesting how much damage the Nighthawk does to champs and the boss. And whenever I see a Nighthawk video, I've got a weakness for it. If I ever see anyone else, I haven't seen any Nighthawk videos this season. To be honest, I can't remember the last time I saw a Nighthawk video. It was probably with Spider the Watcher, because Nighthawk is the best exotic choice, in my opinion, for Spider the Watcher, the Harpy boss. Some people would say Star Eater skills. Yeah, fair enough, but I just like the one-shot style super of Nighthawk, and I always have adored this playstyle since D1, but in D2, it's been through a difficult phase to get it to work, and it always has been in the sandbox. It's never really been in the sandbox. It's only like, I'm on about the meta choice for solo. It's never been there as a choice where you should be running this. The only time I can remember where solo players were like, alright, Nighthawk is your choice, was back in Savathûn's Song. The Prestige Nightfalls and the, whatever, the normal Nightfalls, whatever they were called then. It was the go-to choice for Savathûn's Song because you could insta damage a phase to move to a next phase, and that was invaluable at the time because there wasn't anything in the game that done enough damage apart from pulse grenades and Warcliffe Coil. On a hunter, yeah, you know, it was sort of like, it was a good option at the time. Since then, there hasn't really been, I mean, in raids, it sometimes comes up if you have 6 Nighthawks. But that's very niche. How many times you get 6 hunters together in a raid? you've always got a, especially for LFG, you've always got a mixed bag. You know, 2 Titans, 1 Hunter maybe, and then a load of Warlocks. It never plays out that way unless you are playing with regular players and you've organised to do 6 Hunters. So I don't really count it as a meta thing because it requires 6 of a class, and that doesn't happen frequently in the game. Like there's not many players that get together and do that. There's content on YouTube showing you that, but that's only like a certain set of teams that are doing such a thing. But you see the utility there as Xenophage. That phase that I've just done with the double wizard is a nightmare generally. Even when you're doing it with like a machine gun, it's generally a nightmare. You have to sort of kill 1 wizard and then retreat. You can't generally kill 2 wizards back to back so quickly. Xenophage, 2 shots each. It's well worth the ammo usage there just to quickly melt them, because what happens with the wizards? Well, the AI of the wizard, right, they back up to where the Shrieker is, which means you've got to push up. That means you've got to dance with the acolytes, avoid the nades and all that stuff. If you can just insta-melt wizards like that, I think it's the second best wizard melting tool in the game. Number 1 being Jotun, which I've already made a video about because that has shield disorient. Xenophage doesn't. But I will argue that I suppose Xenophage melts a wizard quicker than Jotun. But it is a heavy and Jotun's a special, so it's an unfair comparison. But Jotun does take the... It is the winner for me, personally. If you're looking at a solo, as a solo weapon for wizards, or any solo shielded enemies, I guess, Jotun's the best. But I've already run a Jotun run. I'm not going to redo a Jotun run, right? What's the point in that? There's no point in that. I've already done that run. But this, as I say, I was interested myself to run it. It's good for bits like this with the Shriekers. We know that in Scarlet Keep, that's always a... that can be a run killer if you're not prepared with them. Xenophage makes short work of them. Means you don't have to do them in... You don't have to hide behind cover and then re-peek and all that stuff. You just melt them straight away and then on to the next section. Let's take out the remaining acolytes. 24 for Xenophage. Full ammo on the Eremite. Now, the only reason why I'm using the Eremite is because I'm seeing more and more people say that they don't have Cartesian coordinate. So I guess you can't get that gun in the game now then. Maybe it's in Zer's loot pool. I don't think it's in Dares of Eternity loot pool. It might be in Zer's loot pool. I don't know. But I'm seeing that more and more. So that's worrying me a little bit because I run Cartesian coordinate a lot. So when I make a solo GM video... and I'm talking extensively about Cartesian, which I do when I'm using it, it's a bit worrying to me that people don't have the gun. And there's a couple of reasons why they might not. They're either a new player or they stupidly deleted it when it came out. Because when that gun initially came out, not everyone was aware of its power right away. It took a bit for the community to work out that, oh yeah, this fusion rifle's insane. And then they're doing a change with fusion rifles, and then it just made it even more powerful. So it worries me when people say, I don't have a Cartesian coordinate. If you're a new player, you let off, right? You let off the hook. But if you're an existing player and you don't have the fusion, why don't you have the fusion? Why have you deleted it? Why have you not farmed it when it was out? I don't get it. So that's why I'm using the Eremite instead, because it's an available weapon right now. It worked out good in this. It's got Control Burst, Envious Assassin. Arguably better perks than Cartesian. But it's not as good as Cartesian. It's not for GMs. The Eremite, as I've said, is a dungeon weapon for me. Because you're going to be able to spam 14 shots back to back with Control Burst. That's valuable. In a GM, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you want to reload behind cover anyways. That's part and parcel of the game. So it doesn't matter that I've got 14 shots loaded, really. Because there's no DPS checks. Do you get it? So it's a different style of weapon. But it still fits the bill. I've used the Royal Executioner. So that's another solar fusion. But I don't recommend that one as much as this one, though. I've already proved to you that that fusion just isn't... It isn't that good, honestly, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't know why it's a fan favourite. Because I don't feel as though it's that good. Because the Reservoir Burst doesn't proc. on all shots. But that's not what the identity of that perk was always just to be one shot store the weapon, one shot store the weapon. But the game's moved on from that. The game's moved on from the OG loaded question, the original rule. We've moved on from that. It's such an old-fashioned perk, but it's fun that it works with Envious Assassin. But that's only half of your ammo that it works on. Control Burst is the perk that you should be using on a fusion, because it works on every shot. The perk up time is higher than Reservoir Burst, therefore it wins. That is what it is. But if you don't bother, if you're not bothered about being that effective, that's fine. Use that Royal Executioner. All the best to you. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying that you'd be better off using the Eremite if you're struggling in the solo. But then even better still, you'd be better of using the Cartusen in that you should have saved it when it was out. But newer players, I can forgive you because you weren't here for it. I don't know why it isn't in the game. I guess it is in Zer's loop pool. I don't know though. I can't remember ever seeing it there. So I'm not 100% certain on that either. So Golden Gun was really good at taking the left wizard out there. We got a shield break with Xenophage first, then crit. Right, you need to understand that the Golden Gun cannot crit behind a shield. So if a shield is up on a target, you can't crit. You will only do body shot damage. This is the number one thing I've seen people when they have used Nighthawk. I'm trying to think about how many times people have really used it. It's not much. But when I have watched Cecil Nighthawk gameplay and somebody pops a Golden Gun, or maybe I'm in a team and they pop it on a Solar Shield, you've got to pop that shield first to then get your crit damage. Unless you're not going to get it, you'll just get that explosion from the Solar Shield and it'll be counted as a body shot. Which they maybe should change that as well with it. Give it a buff so you can pierce through a shield like that. Have it so that it ignores shields. That's another little bonus they can do it. Because they haven't buffed it yet. They've stated what the buff's going to be on the tooltip. But they haven't actually put it in the game yet. So they can add that to the list as well to buff it. Because they need to really incentivize this playstyle. Because it is a glass cannon build. So let it be that if they want to bump its damage a little bit more, I know if they go too far with it, then it makes it dumb for raids. But they have to find some way of incentivizing it, because if you're on a solo hunter, if you're on a hunter at all, you're using Star Eater skills. Star Eater skills, best in slot, easily. And it works with all supers. Cecil Nighthawk only works with one. Why is it Star Eater skills can compete with Nighthawk on its own style of damage? It's not fair. I don't think so. When Star Eater skills works on every element. That's just because Cecil Nighthawk is a very old-fashioned exotic, and Star Eater skills is modern, and it thinks more about the entire game rather than just one aspect. But they have a chance to modernise Cecil Nighthawk, so let's get it modern. Right? There's plenty of ornaments for it, so it looks good. I don't mean the way it looks, but get it modern in today's game. Right? And then we can sort of look at, how it's going to be in the meta. But if they don't do anything, then it will be just the same. Even the precision kill buff that they're going to give to it, where if you get a kill, you get super energy or whatever. That's still not going to be enough for people to use it. Trust me now. And anyways, if you're on a hunter, you're using Strand, because Strand is insane at the minute. It's laughable how insane it is. And I know Strand Titan is insane, but so is Strand Hunter. Just the insane things the Tangles are doing at the minute. I'm not going to use Super here because I want to use it on the final barrier. That is the only reason. Because if I did use it there, even on kill, I wouldn't get my Super back for the final barrier, which arguably the middle barrier in this capture point zone is the hardest. But you saw on my other runs, I brute forced this barrier with Roman Supers. Cecil Nighthawk's not a Roman Super. Well, technically it is, because you can roam around it. But once you shoot it, you lose the damage resistance. So I can't sort of brute force, jump over the thrall, and then immediately kill a barrier like that. So what I'm going to do instead, Xenophage the two snipers, because they are the danger. Then the Thrall are going to push, which I'm going to save a solar nade for. Right, so I've saved the solar nade on purpose to try and take out most of them. I'm trying to bait them in my nade. That didn't work out that well though, to be honest, because a lot of them are still alive. That's okay though. We'll clean them up with Biting Winds, which I'm going to give you some information on Biting Winds coming up in a minute, because it's just a fantastic bow. But we'll finish off the remaining Thrall. Got to be careful as well with the Boomer, the Barrier Champ, the back. I'm going to use Xenophage because he's giving me problems, his Thrall. And then we can quickly melt the barrier now. We've got a Golden Gun 4. Clean up any Thrall. This cost me time, this. If I just went with the insta melt that I said I was going to do, I wouldn't have been able to do it because Xenophage doesn't activate Rapid Fire Ranger. Only my bow would. So the timing wouldn't be there for me to do 2 bow shots, get shield break, then pop super. By the time all that happens, a Thrall starts to come melee, flinches me, I miss my Golden Gun shot. So the timing won't work on it all, and that's why I'm doing it that way. So talking about Biting Winds a little bit. So this bow, I've always had an explosive head Biting Wind since Beyond Light 2020, right? I had one early on, an explosive payload one. But I got a rapid hit one this year. It's took me 3 years to get the rapid hit explosive payload roll, which I've only heard rumours about for years about how good it was with rapid hit. Now, rapid hit doesn't affect draw time, and I know that someone's going to complain. It doesn't affect draw time. I know it doesn't, but it affects the knocking of the arrow, which in turn makes it feel like the draw time is increased anyways, even though it's not. And I know that draw time reloads slightly 2 different things on a bow. But you can talk about stats all day. It doesn't matter. When I'm using it with rapid hit and I'm getting it to proc, I feel really agile with the bow, and I feel like I like using it. Now, when rapid hit isn't procced, it's noticeable the draw time. You'll see the draw time's much slower. It's a 6.8. I think it's 680 draw time. This Biting Winds, which is completely different to my crafted fell taradiddle that is 500 draw time. Yeah, but the thing about the 2 different bows, because I use a lightweight frame bow in the last video, this is a precision frame bow, and it 2 shots body shots a shield, I believe, without debuff, because obviously it's a high impact bow than a lightweight frame. That's actually really good. That's actually super powerful, because whenever they do change and adjust Wish Ender, right, which will happen, it's when they do it. Probably final shape will be the time. They have to change it in final shape. They have to. It's just when they do it. But I think it'll be then. I don't think it'll be next season. I don't think they'll be looking at nerfing anything next season. I think it'll be just all buffs. Get the game hyped up for people and stuff. But if it's Barrier Bow any other season, if it's Barrier Bow again next season, it could be. We don't know. We don't decide all that. Then Biting Winds is going to be a top pick. I suppose any sort of precision style bow with good perks is going to be a great pick for barriers, because you can 2-shot a shield. That's actually really good. The fact that it can do that without debuff. With debuff, I think I've seen me 1-shot a barrier shield. Whether that's meant to be, I don't know. But I have actually seen that happen. I've got a crit on a debuff, and I have had that happen tonight. Whether that's meant to happen, we'll see if it happens again in this run. I don't think it did, but I have seen that happen, which is like, what? Thinking, how has that happened? But because we killed the first barrier right there, just before there, right? Usually the barrier, what does he do? He retreats to the Shrieker. Well, that didn't happen because we melted him before that, but we done that by keeping the Acolytes alive. So it's almost a manipulation to keep the barrier in a nice place, so that it helps us out later on, because when we get to the Shrieker bit, we've already dealt with the barrier, so we're already good. We'll quickly take down the Shrieker with Radiance. I've done an Acrobat's dodge and to make the most out of my ammo. You'll see me, I'll do that at critical times. I'll do an Acrobat's dodge, because that's saving on ammo, isn't it? If you think about it, I'm putting out more damage per shot, because the Radiant will stack with surges and what have you. So it's really good that way. We may as well do a Nighthawk here. The champ is debuffed and he's killable to get the refund back, so I get the third. In my opinion, it shouldn't be a third, it should be 50%. All super regen exotics, or most of them nowadays, operate on this 50% rule. And I think Nighthawk should be the same as that. It should be 50% you get back, and then you get your precision kills. Within 8 kills, you get your golden gun back. And I think that's how it should be, because it's got nothing else going for it in terms of its survivability, apart from Ember of Imperium. But that means that you're using like things like Callus Mini Tool, ad clearing weapons to keep the Ember of Imperium going, which right now that's not something that we're doing because Callus Mini Tool or SMGs aren't in GM rotations for champ mods. So that isn't happening. So it still stands that there's a lot more synergy on Blade Barrage, for example. Once you start putting some fragments on, there's a lot more synergy there that's going on. And you can make more of a universal build. Whereas this isn't... Whenever I feel like I'm playing Nighthawk, it doesn't feel... It feels very one-dimensional. But it does one good thing really well. But in terms of ads, you better make sure you got some decent weapons on, because your weapons are going to do the majority of the work when you're up against red bars and stuff. And people discount red bars in GMs and say, oh, well, you should be able to kill GMs. You should be able to kill red bars in GMs. Yeah, I know, but if you haven't got a good build on for them, they can wipe you. They can also kill your runs, depending on what GM it is. You can get wiped in Glassware off the red bars. Harpies can wipe you, or they can force a wipe. They could have you relocate, reposition, and then barriers snipe you, and then you're dead. There's all sorts of scenarios that can play out. So it's not that red bars are too easy in GMs or anything like that. It's just that it really does sure help when you've got a decent build against red bars, like the Strand Hunter build I showcased, or even Voidwalker Warlock, right? Or Briarbind's Warlock. All these different types of builds, or Strand Titan with the insane things that you can do with Banner of War. So you run a GM with no build, and you'll see the difference when you're up against red bars. That are a little bit more challenging, especially if you haven't got an exotic primary on, because you're not one-shotting them. All right, they're taking down a couple of shots. In the meantime, those you're doing your combat, you get naded. You have to jump. You have to move around. So this is like more like your core gameplay in D2. You're learning to, well, I'm not, but people should be learning to the movement of D2. You don't really learn the movement if you've got a build that just nukes everything, because that's what the game is at the minute. And that's the thing about it, is that when it was double primary meta and stuff like that, and earlier on in the game's life cycle, Forsaken even, you had to rely more on your movement, and you had to rely more on your knowledge of the enemies. Whereas now it's more about the knowledge of the builds. Not to say that it's a bad thing. Well, it is kind of a bad thing, to be honest, because the primary gameplay loop should be about your guns. It shouldn't be builds. Because it is going on that way, where some builds are. The primary loop is your build. It's not so much your weapons. But I like a build that revolves around weapons, But it seems to be that it's going the other way now, where your build's more revolving around a melee, a grenade, or a playback loop of something. But when you don't play with that build, and then you go on an old-fashioned build like this, you're like, oh god, the game's a little tougher than I thought it was. That's because you've been using something that's, was designed when D2 was that's an afterthought, because D2's sort of a game built on different foundations when it was built on the double primary thing, and the game wasn't sort of designed to have the builds that we've got, but they've sort of amended that by upping the ad density and then creating Grandmaster content. But it's just a weird game, because if they'd made D2 in mind with builds in mind, the whole game and structure of the game probably would have been different. So you're playing sort of a mixed game because D2 had a bad launch and they had a bad... they didn't know what they were doing with D2, but they'd already made the game by then, so they had to just work with it. So when we got 3.0 subclasses, it's almost like we got D2.5. But that doesn't sort of wash with me because a lot of the content's still based around the old stuff. Right? So, you know, like Devil's Lair, how old is that strike? No wonder it's the easiest one. You know? And that wasn't based around you having, you know, infinite melees and tangles and getting woven mail and then melting them with a shotgun and then all this sort of stuff. All those sort of strikes weren't designed around that. Which is why I wanted them just to start afresh. To start afresh, make a new game with all your builds in mind so that the game from ground up is designed around you having builds, but also revolving around movement and stuff. But that isn't going to happen, is it? Because they're going a different route with the whole PvP extraction thing, which I'm not interested in at all as a PvE player. I don't know why they've went that way when most of their player base is PvE players, but yet they're going to go on and start making a PvP. Are they just going on a wave there? I mean, Escape from Tarkov has done well, but it's a very niche game. I mean, I don't mind watching it, but I don't want to play it. Yeah, I'm just not into it. So, and a lot of us aren't. There is a PvP fan base, and they are going to play it because it's a Bungie game. It's going to be a new IP and everything, so they're going to play it no matter what. Whether they like the idea or not, they're going to give it a try because they might pull out an amazing game for PvP. But PvE players, what are we going to do? We're stuck with a PvP game, and then they're going to say that the D2 is your PvE game. No, I don't want it. I want a brand new one. This is 2017. This game's old. I want a brand new one. I want a next-gen Bungie game. If it doesn't have to be Destiny, then some other PvE game then that's next-gen. And no mobile games. I'm not interested in mobile games. But, you know, that's where I think that's their answer, isn't it? They're going to say, well, just play D2. That's your PvE experience. Well, no, we've been playing it for years. We want a brand new one. And that's sort of how I think about it. Like, but we'll just see how it goes next year with that, with the episodes and all that stuff. So we're going to get a shield break first. I'm considering whether to use my super or not, if I will get it for the boss fight, which I will. So that's fine, because I've got a third back and then I've got a wizard to kill and stuff. Well, I've got actually a wizard here and then two more wizards on the other floor. Because of how ultras and mages work, you're going to get a lot of super energy back anyways. So obviously take out all the acolytes first. I think that's kind of obvious, but obviously make sure you do, because that's where you get your deaths. If you try and focus, if you try and mow down the wizard while there's acolytes up, because one solar nade can almost kill you if you're standing it long enough. That's all it takes, one solar nade. So we used a solar nade on the wizard plus the stun lock fusion. So another feature of the game, and it's one of the most overlooked, under-talked about things ever. Champion mods work on all enemies in the game in a certain way. So yeah, unstoppable round stops champions, unstoppable champions. We all know this. I'm doing the emote exploit, by the way, which is pretty straightforward. It's self-explanatory. I've just showed you how to do it. But unstoppable round stops unstoppable champions. We know this. But what it also does is it stun locks other enemy types in the game. Any enemies you can think about, it'll stun lock a solar wizard, for example, because it's sort of doing that stagger damage, right? But there's all sorts of different champion mods that have unique things like anti-barrier SMG. We haven't had that in ages, but whenever we get it, that does insane stun lock to enemies. It's sort of like kind of broken. We haven't had anti-barrier SMG for ages. But for those who remember when it was up, it was just like so consistent on the ads because it was just it wasn't working like sort of like unstoppable rounds, but it was sort of it was like adding like a knockback feature to all the enemies. And then we've got obviously overload rounds. So I've got overload LMG on right now. Well, that's working all the time. It's working on these solar wizards. It's disrupting the output damage to me, so I take less damage off their arc blasts because I'm overloading them now, right? I'm obviously not stunning them because they're not an overload, right? But I am sort of just, you know, reducing their damage output to me, and it sort of does make them more docile as well. You try shooting like an enemy over and over with like overload rounds like the Monarch or something, and you'll see they'll start to do less things, and that's true for rapid fire ranger as well this season. When you slow them, they just don't do anything really. So we've just got our super now. We took a while on those double wizards, but it doesn't really matter too much because we've only just got our super anyways, and for this boss strat with Solar Hunter is I need my super up right away. So I was unsure what damage I was going to do. We used to be able to one-shot, remember, but the boss is now hard capped. You can see the there's 2 gates there, meaning 3 phases. So no matter what damage you do, it's impossible to one-shot her. So I got a debuff first, and I got the 325. I think that damage actually was more than the third. But the game won't register anything more than a third because it's hard capped. There's a hard gate. That's what that means. So even though you've probably out damaged the third, the game won't give you that. Whereas some are more soft gated. Armsdealer used to be soft gated. He's not now. He's hard gated. So you can't instantly kill him now like we used to be able to, for example. Which is a shame, but I get why they've done it. They want players to experience the full strike that they've made. Right? They don't want people one-cycling bosses anymore, like we used to. But it was a lot of fun, though, I must tell you. Especially like two-shotting Kali with Sleeper on Corrupted. Those type of memories was really good. But they don't want you doing that stuff now. They want you to see the full fight. They want you to strategize, killing the ads, use a build, and that sort of stuff. Obviously, we're at the pile because we're on a Solar Hunter and it just makes sense. This is where the build isn't that useful. It's useful for getting to the boss, like what we've just done with the champs and the wizards. It's really useful for that. It's useful for doing instant boss damage, because the thing about Cecil Nighthawk is it saves on ammo because you put out so much damage via your super. So you don't need to use basically any ammo on the boss fight at all. A couple of pot shots. That's all you're using. You're not really using much on the boss, which is good because there's a lot of arc knights and stuff, and we've got no arc element. We've got no ag clear build. We've got no support really. So being able to whip out a Xenophage and melt down an arc knight is useful to us. One thing that I should have done with the setup is that I didn't realise how sort of ammo intensive it ended up getting. So I would have been better with shoot to loot, but I don't care. I still kind of liked using my biting wins because it took me years to get the bow, sorry. So I may as well use it. It worked out in the end, but shoot to loot would have been nice because I'm in this exploit zone. I can shoot that brick, whatever brick it might be, a heavy or a green, and that I would have been able to spam a bit more ammo than what I did. So these Arc Knights, the melee ones, they'll push you like that. My goal is to try and get them to fall off if they can, because I save ammo if they do. So they'll try and swipe you but fall off map. That's a win-win if they do that, but it doesn't always happen. But be careful because they can almost one-shot you, like you saw with them with their sword. Boss, when the boss is shielded, by the way, obviously the boss can't attack you. Nothing happens. But I wasn't sure how many ads were up. I was going to pick up that Scorch Orb, but it despawned. That's fine. We can push out now. There's no need to stay behind there because the knight is going to keep hiding. We're going to have to use a bit of Xenophage because I can foresee us taking time with the knight, which I don't want. I want to get the knight finishable. Right, I was going to wait, but I want to see... I wanted to see what ammo was on the floor before I'd done that, but I didn't bother. I just done it. I've only got 1 green brick, so that's actually kind of bad. Because I've got 10 Xeno shots, which I could have done with a bit more heavy. I do end up getting the heavy, by the way, so it's alright, but I'd have liked it if I had a bit more ammo than what I did right now. Because Golden Gun's going to get us to instantly get the damage gate, or just before. So we debuff first, then Golden Gun. A couple of Xeno shots, I maybe should have just bored, but I realised that if I didn't get the boss shielded right away there, all the ads were going to collapse before the bow would do the job. So that's why I kind of done that. But that's fine. This is the champ phase, the Unstopables. So we're going to take out some of the acolytes. Strafing with the bow, that's the biggest thing, because we can't one-shot like Wishender does, but can still put out the decent damage. I chose to use Xeno there because that knight's going to give us problems the entire time when we're dealing with the Unstoppable. So even though I'm sort of complaining about the heavy that I've got, it was the smart choice just to use it on that knight, because that knight's just going to constantly be in our way. We had full special, so that's fine. But you'll see another con to the gun, the Eremite, the fusion. It's got less ammo than Cartesian. That's less stops. You not see how the rapid fire fusions are just better in GMs? They hold more ammo. This was close. They hold more ammo. They shoot faster, which means you can get out of danger quicker. So that's why the rapid fire frames are better. Now I could have used a void fusion because it's void surge. I didn't bother though with it. I just wanted a solo one on. It doesn't. I'm not too fussed. It doesn't matter to me either way. But the rapid fire frames are better in GMs. The high impact frames like this, we'd Envious Assassin, and if you've got a control burst on, then yeah, they're better. But if they haven't got a control burst on, then no, Cartesian is better. Assuming that there's Vorpal on that, because that's 15% Vorpal on it. People forget that Vorpal is it's different depending on the weapon. 20% primaries, 15% specials, 10% heavy. So on heavies it's not that good, yeah, granted. But on a special, it's decent. 15% buffs on for doing nothing is fantastic still. So it's still good. I know control burst and reservoir is a bit higher, but Cartesian doesn't have that. A lot of curse fall in front of this pile. I don't want to peek for too long, because then they'll just run into me and explode. I need to take down this knight. With the Unstoppables pushing, I've got 3 shots left. But that's enough because we've got Unstoppable killed. There's loads of ammo on the floor. This is where shoot to loot would have worked right now. Help me out. But it's not the be-all and end-all. Like, we're about to go and get that ammo. Whoop-de-doo, it's going to save me, 30, 40 seconds. Probably, yeah. But that means I'm not using Biting Winds, the bow that I've wanted to use for years. You get it? So I've already had a go with the lightweight frame bow on the other video, so I'm not going to... You'll see me do that. Sometimes I'll switch weapon types just to make it a little bit more interesting and refreshing for me. Right, it's like saying when you use a scout, right, I'm going to use Hung Jury this week. Or you know what, in next week, I'll go back to Nightwatch. I haven't played with Nightwatch for ages. Even though the weapon type does the exact same job, you'll see me sometimes switch between sort of similar weapon types. Just to keep it interesting, that's all it is. When I ran out there, I did not realise there was that many acolytes alive. So that was probably the worst mistake of the run. So that was a mistake. I did not realise there was that many acolytes when I ran out of the ammo. Getting solar-naded here too frequently. I wasn't liking that, so I'm going to get another solar-nade over there to stop that acolyte doing that. We'll try and get this knight killed around this corner because that knight is a pain. And then it's just all the acolytes down the left-hand side of the map. You'll see how sluggish the bow is without rapid hit. I admit that because of the draw time of it, but it is a precision frame bow. I'm just saying that your precision frame bows are very good if you've got like Archer's Tempo on them and stuff, because they have the feel of a lightweight frame bow but hit far harder than them, right? And that's a lot to be said for on that. Whereas the other way around, if you've got a lightweight frame bow that you can craft with high accuracy, then then the bow is fast draw time, but with really fantastic accuracy that shouldn't be on that bow. We're just going to debuff boss first, couple of Xenophage shots first, and then just super, because I didn't know how quickly it would kill. But that was a solo GM on that. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.